Hello, lovelies. Apologies for the wet look. I just got out of the shower, but rest assured, I'm not about to party hard. I know you come here for the game stuff, but political stuff keeps happening, and this one is particularly relevant to me, so I want to talk about it. This is my channel, and I'll do what I want. And I'll front load this, I think, with the more general point I want to make, which is kind of an extension of what I was talking about yesterday on the pretentious waffle. The government has been threatening disability payments here in the UK, which is not what you expect from a left-wing, or an ostensibly left-wing Labour government, and this has been massively disappointing to a lot of people. However, we seem to have a bit of a partial victory in that the government appears to have climbed down and is trying to make concessions to the rebellion in their own ranks, which was threatening to pretty much completely destroy the legislation and stop it going through at all. So it seems that they're finally taking sort of negotiations seriously. It's a climb down, it's not a full U-turn, and it's not a full and proper climb down, but things might seem to be a little better. It seems to me like they're just trying to move things around a little bit, enough to shave off enough rebels for it to not be such a big defeat a little bit further down the line. But everyone in the media is treating it like this is the end of it, and it's a much bigger deal perhaps than it might necessarily be for Keir Starmer. Anyway, this whole affair has revealed to me that a lot of people have extremely negative and selfish views on the disabled. This despite the fact that disability, mental health issues, whatever, can literally barrel out of the blue and happen to anyone. A lot of people seem to think that every other claim is fraudulent, or that a lot of it is. It isn't. We'll get into that in a bit. It's hard not to take this personally as someone with both mental health issues and some physical disability. Of course, people never mean me. Oh, we don't mean you, Grim. You're one of the good ones when they talk about this stuff. Same as when people go off about immigrants and Mrs. Grimm points out that she's an immigrant. Oh, it's never her. it's the other immigrants. But it doesn't really matter that they don't mean me, does it? And it's not just me that I'm worried about, and it seems weird to me that other people aren't worried about other people. The politics of this current moment are no longer abstract or ideological debates. This is the point where the rubber meets the road, and I don't just mean about the disability issues here in the UK, whether it's America's long, slow slide into fascism, and that is now an appropriate word to use, I think, though I realise it's lost a lot of its cachet, or whether it's the threat of a similar rise in the far right here in the UK, even if Reform's current efforts in town and city councils and so on are a bit of a clown show. It's a bit like it was during COVID for me, I think. I wasn't at an elevated risk of infection due to a debilitated immune system, and I was waiting on an operation which was repeatedly delayed because of COVID, because the medical staff kept getting ill. And there were people around me spouting off conspiracy theories, nonsense, life-threatening disinformation and gibberish, and so I had to disengage and move away from that because that was genuinely harmful behaviour on their part. Now, increasingly, I find myself surrounded by people who seem more willing than I gave them credit for to turn a blind eye to anything, so long as it's their guy doing it, whether it's unnecessary war in the Middle East, whether it's complete lawlessness and ignoring the rule of law, whether it is the plight of their fellow man, the plight of refugees and immigrants and the poor and anybody else. Maybe it's me that's weird, but when other people are harmed, I tend to feel it too. An excess of mirror neurons, perhaps, I don't know. Yet I'm supposed to keep my trap shut as the token leftist about my politics, and never to push back or say anything, even as the people around me insert their politics into what they're saying, or spout some absolute economic or social nonsense, or even quote anti-Semitic memes, which I do not like. Restraining myself from vociferous argument against this sort of thing is starting to give me acid reflux, and honestly, I really did expect better of people who are around me. You know, I like to maintain contact with people who disagree with me, because I like to delude myself that I'm having some sort of positive experience, or at the very least humanizing the left to them, and so I expect better of my friends even on the right. Yes, I am. Uncomfortable times that remind me of the worst parts of COVID. When it comes to the PIP stuff here in the UK, that's personal independence payment, I certainly expected better of people, because a lot of people are disabled, and most people should know a family member or someone in their extended circle who is or who has become disabled. Much of this supposed reform was targeted against PIP, which is the assistance that I get at the most minimal level. And this is not an easy benefit to get by any stretch of the imagination. 2/3 of people are denied on their first application, not because they're not sick or don't qualify, but because the system is set up against them deliberately. Of those people who apply, 70% of those who take it all the way through the appeals process to tribunal win. And the tribunal is a panel of actual experts. So something fishy is definitely going on, and has been going on for some time. But it is such a grueling and long-winded and difficult process that it is little wonder then that the PIP fraud rate is 0.04%. Statistically none, as far as governmental statistics are ever concerned. And yet, the same rightoids who fought so hard for rich pensioners to keep their heating bill assistance claim to know a scrounger or 20 who is faking it, but the statistics simply do not support that. Maybe some of that has more to do with the shame and suspicion that is heaped upon the disabled. So much so that it's almost better to pretend that you got one over on the system rather than to admit that you're a crip. If you're curious at all, here's the process of applying for PIP. Nobody advises you that you qualify. You have to come to that realization yourself, and you have to apply yourself. In fact, there is a huge number of people in the UK who are entitled to benefits and assistance of various kinds, not just PIP, but who never apply and never get it. I held off for a very long time because I was ashamed. That isn't how it should be, and that's not how I believe it should be. I would not shame someone. And yet I succumbed to that myself. So, that's the first hurdle. You have to realize that it exists, that you might qualify, and then you have to look up how to do so yourself. You must have evidence of your illnesses, and I don't just mean turning up with a limp and a cough to the assessments. I mean your doctor who knows you, your family doctor, needs to agree that you have issues. Any counsellors or psychiatrists that you've seen need to weigh in as well. Your prescriptions list needs to go to the assessor. You also have to give them access to your full medical records. And anything else that might weigh in your favour has to be gathered together and submitted in evidence to them. And quite often they lose your evidence, so make sure you have multiple copies. And make sure you include a self-addressed envelope when you send it out so they can send it back. So once you've submitted all this evidence and they decide whether you even should be assessed, then you get assessed. Frequently, by an unqualified, privately hired person at a clinic or a wellness centre, some bollocks like that. And their word is weighted and considered more than that of your doctor or your counsellor or your psychiatrist. They ask you a bunch of questions meant to determine what support you get, if any, and at what level. And they often insert a whole bunch of additional extra questions. And as has now been well documented, they also often lie about what you've said. So much so that charities advise you to record the sessions or the phone calls. They started doing video assessments during COVID. You know? So them lying about your state, your need, is so routine that charities and advisors now suggest that you record the session so that they can't lie. But they will often lie and say you're not allowed to record the session. So that's something else you have to consider as well. And there are these misleading additional questions that they ask that aren't really anything to do with the form. And if you're easily intimidated, or you're nervous, or you don't know what's going on, you may answer those unsanctioned questions in ways that cause them to disqualify you. If they do deny you, which they do in 2/3 of cases, you can go for a mandatory reconsideration. Now that is about as much use as appealing to YouTube when they erroneously block your video for some reason. It's meant to be a human process, but frankly, I doubt it. I think they just kind of rubber stamp denied most of the time to try and put you off. And finally, you can go to tribunal and get your situation and your health assessed by actual qualified professionals, who the majority of the time, 70+% of the time, will agree with you and the health professionals and not the DWP and their unqualified assessor. And then, even if you get it, they may well stop your claim arbitrarily, or if the reminder letters get lost in the post and you are never even aware that you need to resubmit, then you're stuffed and you have to reapply. The first time I applied, it took over a year to finally get approved, and I had to fight all the way to tribunal. Now imagine you have terminal cancer with a 6-month window. Too late, right? And the same with a lot of other illnesses. You're just kind of left in limbo, and back payments are all well and good, but they're not particularly helpful if you're stuck for 6 months to a year waiting for them to decide that, okay, we miscounted, you do only have one leg after all. PIP is not an out-of-work payment either. In many cases, it is a payment that enables people to work. That's certainly what it has done for me, to an extent. About 20% of people who claim PIP do work, and the PIP payment is often what allows them to work. What PIP is supposed to be is an assistance with the additional costs and so on that are associated with your condition. So medical appliances and things you might need, or relief or assistance. Daily living allowance at the lower rate pays out about £300 a month, and that's an awful lot of stress and effort and time to get less than £4,000 a year. If you qualify for the higher daily living allowance and the higher mobility allowance, you're still only going to be getting about £700 a month. And that's for people who are seriously incapacitated. I have chronic severe ongoing depression and general anxiety. I'm heavily medicated. I also now have a bit of a physical disability related to chronic pain and mobility issues related to my blood pressure. But I haven't dared apply for a change of circumstances to reflect my physical disability. Because there's just too much risk to it. It's not worth the extra £25 a week or whatever it is to put the rest of it at risk. Especially in this situation where everything is still under threat and still up in the air. You know, I walk with a stick. I find social situations and travel extremely difficult. My payments largely go towards transport and things I find difficult because of stress, like making meals. Also things like walking canes, comfortable seating aids, paying for repairs for things that allow me to work, like my laptop, and so on. Other disabled people use these funds to help purchase wheelchairs, walkers, to pay for psychiatric care privately because the NHS has been gutted, especially mental health services, over the last 15 years, and so on. And it really doesn't go a long way when it comes to these kind of things. I mean, wheelchairs, decent wheelchairs, cost £5,000 plus. So, just to give you an idea, I know that because I've raised money for people's wheelchairs. So just to stress again, PIP is not an out-of-work benefit. It is not for the work-shy. It is a compensation for these additional costs that our disabilities incur upon us. It helps a lot of people continue to work, or get into work, or stay in work, especially through the Motability Scheme, which helps pay for specialised modified vehicles for people. There is virtually no fraud, statistically zero. And it is what allows many disabled people to work. It's not shocking to me, and it shouldn't be shocking to anyone at all, that after 15 years of defunding the NHS under the Tories, particularly the mental health services, which are wholly inadequate, it's hardly surprising to me that more people than ever are physically and mentally unwell. We also had a fucking pandemic, and don't you think that maybe long COVID might well explain at least part of the higher rates of disability as well? And the UK under Bojo didn't do particularly well with COVID, did we? Which probably also helps explain why we have some of the highest disability rates in the OECD. Because we've gutted the health services that keep people fit, thanks to the right wing. And we didn't handle COVID particularly well, again, thanks to the right wing. There are other solutions to these financial problems that the country has, chief amongst which would seem to be taxing the rich, but somehow that's never on the agenda. I don't even mean taxing them more, just closing the loopholes and ensuring that they pay what they already owe. They benefit from society. It's high time they contributed proportionally a fair amount towards it. And in particular, it beggars belief that anyone believes that the UK's far right has their interests in mind, rather than being an exercise in misdirecting hate towards immigrants and selling off the NHS. I mean, we need only look across the pond to see what happens when these fuckwits get in charge.
Splatpunk is a retroclone RPG, so you can make your own Splatpunk games, whether that be cyberpunk, clockpunk, steampunk, biopunk, narcopunk, whatever it might be. You'll find this system adaptable to all your needs. Available at post-mort.com, lulu.com and drive-through RPG.